All right, I want you to imagine that you are in a dangerous situation, so you call the police, but they aren't able to help in time. It's a scenario playing out all over America with dire consequences. In a nation plagued by crime and chaos, law enforcement shortages have left small and large communities vulnerable. With understaffing and difficult recruiting, hundreds of positions are empty in big cities, and some of the smaller departments are actually closing down completely. The proud men and women in blue say they're stretched thin. Tonight, we'll discuss the root cause of this crisis and explore how to save our safety and security from just crumbling completely. My first guest, Julia, says her entire world was shattered because of the city's decision to defund the police.
Doug was my second son. He was very happy, loving. Doug went to Boston to celebrate his completion of his education with childhood friends that he had forever. They were on 6th Street. They were sort of bar hopping. All of a sudden, there were shots. Doug was hit immediately. There were 2 police officers working on him because it was serious. They took him to the hospital. The police did all they could to help, but it was a disaster. People laying all over the street, screaming for help. There weren't enough police officers. There weren't enough ambulances. Defunding the police played a big factor in why my son is dead. The people to blame are the city council members and the mayor. They defunded the gang unit. The shooter was a teenager from a gang. Losing my son to this type of violence it's just still too hard to believe.
Well, Julia, that's hard to imagine. And it's still hard when you see this and have to think about it, right?
I did everything to hold myself back from crying.
Yeah. I guess the hardest thing about it is your feeling is it didn't have to happen. And then it didn't have to end the way it did.
Absolutely. When the gang member started shooting, he didn't have help right away. He got hit from the side and it went across his whole stomach and blew out everything. The ambulance, it was there. There weren't really enough police there at all, but the police did everything they could to save him. In court, they showed him the video of his friend Michael grabbing him and running with him to the end of the block. And you see the police officer there and you see my son reaching for help. And they had to put him in their own car because there was no help. And they took him in their police car and rushed him to the hospital. If it wasn't for defending, there would have been more police officers there. And there would have been people who knew the certain divisions who would have known who was coming in and out of there.
So this starts way back before that night because there was a movement to defund the police in Austin. And so you're saying there weren't enough officers down on 6th Street to be monitoring, watching, spotting activity that they could have stopped if it was going on.
Yes.
They didn't have EMTs there to render aid that they could. So this rollbacks of budget, eliminating positions, all that just has a snowball effect.
Absolutely. And when you catch somebody and you let them out 5 minutes later, what does that tell them? And now you're telling them we're defunding the police. So here you go. Here's your green light. Go do whatever you want to do. Kill, rape, do whatever. No one's going to do anything about it.
You're saying it sends a signal.
Absolutely.
That we're not a city of laws. You blame the city and then the mayor for doing the defunding. And what did the defunding look like there? What did Austin do?
I don't know how much exactly they lost, but it was in the millions. The city is a disaster. It's disgusting. They just don't have enough help to handle the crimes that's going on there.
Well, in 2020, Austin City Council voted to cut $21.5 million from the police budget and to transfer an additional $128 million from the police to other city departments. So we're talking about a lot of money. But then, after the fact, their budget was record high because they recognized, oh, okay, obviously this doesn't work. Obviously this is a problem, but that doesn't help you.
It's too late.
Yeah.
You know, it just shows you that they don't care about you. They beg for the job. They promise you anything. You put them in office and you're disposable. You're replaceable.
Yeah.
They don't need you. They couldn't care less. They only did what they had to do to make it look good.
Minneapolis cut $7.8 million, but then they later put $6.4 million of it back. LA City Council approved $11.8 billion, and then $87 million was increased back to the LAPD. So I'm telling you, it's a lot of virtue signaling. They just say, okay, right now, everybody's anti-police, so we're going to stand up and really make a big change here. But it doesn't work because they realize we've got to have law and order. In the meantime, people like yourself wind up with a huge loss.
But isn't it sad? These are the people running our city and state.
Yeah. Coming up, a woman who says the county is really to blame for the death of Julia's son. We'll explain why. Major cities have hundreds of jobs unfilled among the police ranks because they can't recruit. Nobody wants those jobs.
Well, you're absolutely right. Why would you, and I mean, think about this, if you're a young person, why would you go toward that profession?
Struggling with foot, knee, or back pain? G-Defy shoes can change your life. G-Defy shoes are FTC approved to relieve pain caused by weight-bearing activities like walking, running, or prolonged standing. G-Defy absorbs harmful shock and returns energy to each step. This means better body alignment and improved biomechanics. Translation? Freedom to do what you love pain-free. G-Defy shoes have your back. Literally. They're a game changer for seniors and veterans who deserve comfort and support. Here's the deal. You can try G-Defy risk-free with a 60-day trial. And right now, listeners of this podcast get an exclusive offer. 50% off orders of $120 or more. Just text Dr. Phil to 91888. That's right. Half off shoes designed to improve your quality of life. So take control of your life. Text Dr. Phil to 91888 or visit gdefy.com today. It's time to feel good again because you deserve it.
The American law enforcement officer has been demonized and vilified. And because of that, we have an increase in police officer resignations and retirements. You know, and this pattern that we're seeing of police officers leaving their agencies is going to continue until we go back to respecting the American law enforcement officer and appreciating exactly what they do for their communities.
Well, that was retired Sergeant Betsy Smith. She is the spokesperson for the National Police Association and says law enforcement shortages have been a crisis years in the making. It's good to see you again. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Dr. Phil, for having me back.
Yeah, we've talked about this before. I bet we talk about it again because this is something that needs to be managed. It's not going to be cured. But what's going on with this? To me, this is a problem of perception, not reality.
You're absolutely right. This is truly a false narrative that somehow the American law enforcement officer is the problem. This really goes back to 2014, the justifiable police shooting of Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri. And then you go forward to the death of George Floyd in 2020, and so many people, media, politicians, school teachers, and on, even entertainers, said that somehow it's the American law enforcement officer who is the problem. We're the ones who are committing violence. And so after 2020, a lot of American law enforcement officers said, you know what, we're out. We can't do this anymore because nobody's going to get rich from being a cop. You don't do it for the money. You do it because you have a sense of mission and you want to help your community. You want to help victims like your son. And we need to get back to understanding what cops do, and we need to understand the true facts about police use of force and what the realities are of the day-to-day life of the American law enforcement officer and what we do for our communities.
Yeah. I spend a lot of time with police departments, as you know. I've spent time with NYPD, hours on patrol with them after an officer was shot and killed on a routine traffic stop. And they really hurt when this happens, just like you hurt when your son is killed. And you say that big cities have hundreds of jobs unfilled among the police ranks because they can't recruit. Nobody wants those jobs.
Well, you're absolutely right. Why would you? And I mean, think about this. If you're a young person and you have been told in school and in college and by the media and by singers that the police are bad, why would you go toward that profession? And so we have this terrible shortage. So what we're having to do, departments are having to lower their standards. They're trying to do big hiring bonuses. There's so many different things. And yet, you know, what has the defund the police movement called for? Oh, cops need to be better trained. They need to be better educated, all of that. And yet we are fostering just the opposite. Cops go out and make good arrests every day. They do great investigative work. And if nobody will prosecute those cases, why would you keep doing your job?
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, that creates a morale problem. And when they started all of this defund stuff, we saw resignations at a highest level, right?
And retirements. 47% increase in police retirements. As soon as cops could retire, they decided to get out. And then a lot of cops just left and went to other professions.
Because the fact is, if they got a target on them, they feel like, okay, I'm seeing a crime happen over here. I can intervene, maybe even have to pull my gun, and that can be criminalized. I could wind up getting prosecuted and face charges for manslaughter, murder, for putting myself in the gap to protect society. That's a morale problem. That's a motivation problem.
Well, it absolutely is. When I was a young cop, you know, we worried about getting, you know, am I going to get sued or am I going to do something outside of policy? Now, police officers like these go to work every day wondering, am I going to get indicted for simply doing my job? And that's one of the biggest problems departments around the country is there's prosecutors more interested in putting cops in jail than they are bad guys.
That's exactly what I heard.
And that's too bad because I've talked to people in the communities like Ferguson, Missouri, and they're the first ones to say, we don't want less cops. We want our businesses protected. We want our homes protected. We want our neighborhoods protected. We don't want this rollback. These are activists that are out front virtue signaling saying, we're going to jump on this bandwagon and demonize the police when they're needed out there. They were needed when your son was shot by gangs. Somebody needed to be there controlling, neutralizing those gangs, and there weren't enough cops there to do it. Look, police make mistakes. There's no question. They make mistakes in screening. There are some people that are given a badge and gun that should never be given a badge and gun. And there are constant efforts made to improve the screening process, and there's no doubt about that. But there are somewhere between, I don't know what, depending on how you define it, 900 and 1 million men and women in uniform in this country today. The vast majority, 99.9% of those people are good people that get up every morning and put their lives in danger. And I've said before, I never pass a law enforcement officer on the street when I'm walking in a city that I don't stop and go over and shake their hand and say, thank you for what you do. And we all need to do that.